I never thought I'd be the kind of man to get blindsided by betrayal, especially not like this. Jasmine and I had been married for 4 years. She was younger than me by almost 15 years, full of life, energy, and a kind of beauty that turned heads. After my first marriage ended in divorce, I thought she was my second chance at happiness. She made me feel like a man again. Like I wasn't just some aging businessman whose best years were behind him, and for a while, I believed the illusion. At first, things were good, great, even. Jasmine was affectionate, playful, always wanting to be close to me. We traveled together, went to fancy dinners, spent weekends wrapped up in each other, but then, slowly, things started to shift. She was always on her phone, smiling at messages she'd never share. She suddenly had errands that took all day. The late-night headaches became an excuse to avoid sex. That I tried to ignore it. That I told myself I was imagining things. That she was just bored or going through a phase, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. The real gut punch came when I noticed how close Jasmine was getting to my son, Ethan. Ethan was 24. My son from my first marriage. He had always been a bit rebellious, part of the reason his mother and I never saw eye to eye. But he was my boy. My flesh and blood, and lately, Jasmine and Ethan had been spending a lot of time together, inside jokes at the dinner table that I wasn't a part of. Late-night conversations in the kitchen when they thought I was asleep, the way her eyes lingered on him just a second too long. At first, I told myself it was nothing. She was trying to be a good stepmother. He was just finally opening up to her, but something in the back of my mind wouldn't let it go. Something told me I needed to start paying attention, because I was about to uncover a truth so sickening, so unfathomable, that it would change my life forever. I started watching them more closely, not because I wanted to but because I had to. Something felt off. Jasmine and Ethan weren't just friendly. They weren't just bonding. There was an undercurrent, something I couldn't put my finger on yet, but it was there. And once I started paying attention, the signs became impossible to ignore. It was a Saturday night when I first felt the real sting of suspicion. I had walked into the living room to find them on the couch together, not just sitting too close. Jasmine was laughing at something on her phone, leaning into him, her hand casually resting on his leg. I froze in place. She had never sat that close to me in weeks. The moment they noticed me, they both moved fast, like they had been caught doing something they weren't supposed to. "Hey, babe," Jasmine said, smiling like nothing was wrong. "We were just watching a movie." "Yeah, Dad," Ethan added, stretching like he hadn't just been practically glued to my wife. I forced a nod, trying to push down the growing unease in my gut, but as I walked away, I realized my hands were shaking because I knew that look Jasmine gave me. It was the look of a liar. Sex between us had already become rare. First, I thought it was stress or just the ebb and flow of marriage. But now, after that night in the living room, I started putting the pieces together. Jasmine barely touched me anymore. She'd kiss me, but it was quick, forced. When I reached for her in bed, she'd say she was too tired or not feeling well. If I tried to hold her hand, she'd pull away as if it was a chore. But what really got to me, she was always texting. Always smiling at her phone, and when I asked her who she was talking to, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Just a friend, Oscar." "You're being paranoid." Paranoid, that word sat in my chest like a weight, because the last time someone told me I was being paranoid, I ended up being right. The real crack in the foundation happened one morning. Jasmine had just gotten out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, her skin still damp. I walked into the bathroom to grab my toothbrush when something caught my eye, a faint, reddish mark on her collarbone. It was small. But it was there. I stepped closer. "What's that?" She frowned. "What?" I pointed at it. "That mark on your neck." Her hand flew to the spot. For the briefest second, she hesitated, then, she laughed, forced, too casual. "Oh, that? It's from my curling iron. I burned myself this morning." A curling iron. I stared at her. It was a good excuse. A quick excuse, but what she didn't realize, Jasmine never curled her hair. I didn't say anything, not yet, but that was the moment I stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt, because deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge yet, I knew the truth. Something was happening, and soon, I was going to find out exactly what it was. Doubt had turned into certainty. Jasmine was lying to me. The question wasn't if she was cheating, it was with who, and As much as I wanted to believe it was anyone else, deep down, I had a sickening feeling about Ethan, but I needed proof. Real proof, and soon, I found it. Jasmine had always been protective of her phone. Lately, though, she had become paranoid. She kept it face down at all times. If it buzzed while we were together, she'd grab it instantly, and if I even glanced at it, she'd say, "Can I have some privacy, Oscar?" But one night, she made a mistake. She fell asleep with her phone right next to me. I hesitated. I had never been the kind of husband to snoop, but this wasn't about curiosity, this was about the truth. So, with my heart pounding, I picked up her phone, locked. Of course, but then, as if the universe was on my side, a notification popped up. A text, from Ethan. "Can't wait for tonight. I've been thinking about you all day." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My own son, the rage, the confusion, the sheer disgust flooded through me so fast I thought I might actually be sick, but I wasn't done. I needed more. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I took her finger and pressed it against the fingerprint sensor. The phone unlocked, and what I saw inside, it destroyed me. The texts between Jasmine and Ethan weren't flirty. They were explicit, detailed, undeniable. "Jasmine, you made me sore after last time. Ethan, you love it. You always beg for more. Jasmine, I can't wait for the next time your dad isn't home." I stopped breathing. I scrolled up. There were photos, her. In my house. In my bedroom, some taken from angles I recognized, like she had taken them while she was in bed with him, the bed I shared with her, the bed I bought for her. And the worst part, these messages had been going on for over a year. I sat there, staring at the screen, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. My mind couldn't process it. This was my wife, this was my son. How? Why? I wanted to scream. To break something. To wake Jasmine up and demand answers right now, but I couldn't, not yet, because this wasn't just cheating, this was something much worse. And the next move, it had to be mine. Jasmine and Ethan thought they were getting away with it, but soon, they were going to find out just how wrong they were, because I wasn't just confronting them. I was about to make them regret it. I sat there, gripping Jasmine's phone, staring at the filth she had been exchanging with my own son, the woman I married, the boy I raised, betraying me. Together. The rage inside me was like a fire, but I forced myself to stay calm, because if I lost control now, they'd just lie. They'd manipulate, twist the story, and try to make me doubt what I had just seen, but they couldn't lie their way out of this. Not this time. Jasmine was still asleep, peaceful, like she hadn't just spent the past year destroying our marriage behind my back. I wanted to shake her awake. To yell. To demand answers. Instead, I sat beside her and held up her phone. Then, in the calmest voice I could manage, I whispered, "Who were you thinking about all day?" Her eyes fluttered open. She blinked at me, confused. "What?" I turned the phone so she could see the messages. The color drained from her face. She shot up in bed. "Oscar." I didn't let her speak. I stood up, my voice dangerously low. "Say his name." She swallowed hard. "I don't know what you're talking about." I laughed, not because it was funny but because she was still trying to lie. So I scrolled to the worst text I could find, then I read it aloud. "I can't wait for the next time your dad isn't home." She flinched, her mouth opened, but she had no excuse. I threw the phone on the bed beside her. "Say his name." She looked down. "Oscar, please, say it." She burst into tears, but I wasn't falling for her act, not this time, because I had proof, and so did Ethan. I stormed out of the bedroom, fury in my veins. Ethan was downstairs, completely oblivious to what was coming. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, looking comfortable, like he hadn't been sleeping with my wife, like he hadn't been betraying me for months. He looked up and smirked. "Morning, Dad." I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. "Get up." His smirk faded. "Huh? Get up." He stood, frowning. "What's wrong?" I held up Jasmine's phone. Then, without a word, I opened the texts. I watched as his face changed. The cocky grin vanished. The color drained from his cheeks. His guilt was all the confirmation I needed. "You thought I wouldn't find out?" I said, my voice shaking. You thought I was too blind to see what was happening right under my own roof? He took a step back. Dad, listen, I took a step forward. How long, Ethan? I demanded. How long have you been sleeping with my wife? Jasmine ran down the stairs, still in her robe, tears streaming down her face. Please, Oscar, stop, she sobbed. Let's talk about this. I turned to her, rage exploding inside me. Talk? I laughed bitterly. You mean the way you talk to my son? The way you talk to him in our bed? She covered her face, sobbing. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Dad. I froze. Like this? He wasn't denying it. He wasn't saying it was a mistake, that he was only sorry he got caught. That I looked at the two people I had loved the most. One was my wife, the woman I thought would be my partner for life. The other was my son, my own flesh and blood. They had betrayed me together, and the worst part, neither of them looked truly sorry. They were just trying to do damage control, because they didn't regret what they had done. They only regretted that I found out. Jasmine thought she could lie her way out of this. Ethan thought I would forgive him, but they had no idea what was coming next, because I wasn't just walking away, that I was about to make sure they both regretted this for the rest of their lives. Standing in my own home, staring at Jasmine and Ethan, the two people who had betrayed me the most, I realized something. They didn't deserve an easy way out. Jasmine had spent months lying to my face. Ethan had been sneaking around behind my back. They weren't sorry. They were caught, and now, they were about to feel the consequences. That I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Then, I turned to Ethan. Pack your things, I said flatly. He blinked. What? You heard me, I said, stepping closer. I want you out of my house. Tonight. Dad, come on, let's talk about this, I laughed. A cold, bitter sound. Talk? Like you talk to my wife behind my back? Like you talk to her in my bed? Ethan had nothing to say. Because there was nothing he could say. Then, I turned to Jasmine. You too? She gasped. Oscar, wait, I shook my head. You lost the right to call me that, I said, my voice dangerously low. She reached out to touch me. I stepped back. No more lies, I said. No more excuses. I want you both gone. Jasmine dropped to her knees, tears running down her face. Oscar, please. We can fix this. I love you. I stared at her. I had loved this woman. I had given her everything, and she had given herself to my own son. You don't love me, I said, my voice cold. You love what I gave you. She shook her head, sobbing. I made a mistake, she cried. A terrible, horrible mistake. But you can't just throw away our marriage. I stepped even closer, looking down at her. You threw it away the moment you slept with Ethan. She whimpered. Where will I go? I smiled. Maybe Ethan can take care of you, I said. Isn't that what you wanted? I turned to my son. What do you think, Ethan? Ready to be a man? Or was this just a game to you? Ethan didn't answer because he knew that he never wanted Jasmine for real. She had been just fun to him. A thrill, and now, she was his problem. I walked to my office, grabbed my laptop, and opened our bank accounts. Jasmine had no idea that I had already spoken to a lawyer last week. When I first suspected something was wrong, that I had been prepared. Her name was removed from all shared accounts. The house? In my name only. The credit cards? Cancelled. I looked at her one last time. You should leave before I call the police. Her face twisted in shock. You're kicking me out with nothing? I smiled. You gave yourself to someone else. Let him take care of you. Ethan looked away. Jasmine's mouth fell open. Ethan? You're not going to defend me? He stayed silent. She grabbed his arm. Ethan, baby, say something. I laughed again. Baby? The reality was setting in. Jasmine thought she was in control, that she could manipulate us both, but now, she realized she had no one. Jasmine thought she could cheat and still win. Ethan thought I would forgive him, but they had no idea what was coming next, because I wasn't done, not yet. Throwing Jasmine and Ethan out of my house should have felt like the end of it, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Jasmine wasn't the type to accept defeat, Ethan wasn't the type to take responsibility, and soon they were both going to prove me right. I watched from the doorway as Jasmine stood frozen, staring at Ethan, waiting, begging. She thought he would say something, anything to fix this, but Ethan just ran a hand through his hair, looking more annoyed than guilty. "Look, I didn't think it would go down like this," he muttered. "But, Dad, you're kind of overreacting." "Overreacting?" I stepped toward him, my fists clenched. "You slept with my wife," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "And you have the nerve to say I'm overreacting?" Ethan scoffed. "Come on," he said. "It's not like you and Jasmine were even happy." Jasmine's head snapped toward him, her face full of shock, like she hadn't realized what she was to him, like she actually believed he loved her. For the first time since this started, I saw fear in her eyes, and that's when I knew she had just lost everything. Jasmine grabbed Ethan's arm. "You don't mean that, baby," she whispered. "You told me I was different. You told me you—" Ethan jerked away from her. "Don't do that," he said, shaking his head. "You knew what this was." Jasmine looked like she had been slapped, her lip trembled. But you said," Ethan sighed. "Look, I liked the thrill, okay? But now that my dad knows, this is just messy." Jasmine staggered back, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Ethan looked at me. "I'll leave for now, but don't expect me to apologize for this." I stared at him. This was my son, the boy I raised, the boy I sacrificed so much for, and this was who he had become. "You're dead to me," I said, my voice like ice. He shrugged. "Whatever." Then, without looking back, he walked away. Jasmine was still standing in my driveway, shaking, completely wrecked. She had lost me, she had lost her lover, and now, she had nothing. I turned to walk back inside. That's when I heard her scream. "You'll regret this, Oscar." I paused at the door, then, without turning around, I said the last words I would ever say to her. "You already do." And with that, I shut the door. On her, on my past, on all of it. Jasmine and Ethan thought they could do whatever they wanted and walk away untouched, but soon, they were going to learn what real consequences felt like, because I wasn't just moving on. I was making sure they regretted this for the rest of their lives. Jasmine and Ethan were gone. I had kicked them out. Shut the door. Cut them off completely. But somehow, I knew this wasn't over, because people like Jasmine and Ethan don't just disappear, they come crawling back when the consequences hit them. And sure enough, it didn't take long. It started with the messages. It first, they were pathetic. "Jasmine, Oscar, please, just talk to me. Jasmine, I know I made a mistake, but we had a good life together. You can't just throw it all away." I ignored them. Then, they turned angry. "Jasmine, you're so cold. I gave you the best years of my life, and this is how you treat me?" "Jasmine, I only went to Ethan because you stopped paying attention to me." I laughed at that one. She really thought she could blame me for her own disgusting choices, but when she realized her manipulation wasn't working, she went for the nuclear option. A few days later, I got a call from a mutual friend. "Dude," he said, voice urgent. "Have you seen what Jasmine is saying about you?" I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Check Facebook." I did, and there it was. A long, dramatic post from Jasmine. She called me abusive. She claimed I was controlling and emotionally neglectful. She even hinted that I had driven her to find comfort elsewhere. It was all lies, and the worst part, some people actually believed her. There were comments like, "Stay strong, Jasmine. No one deserves to be in a toxic marriage. If he was so good to you, why were you unhappy? Sometimes, you outgrow people. It's not your fault." I clenched my jaw. She wasn't just trying to crawl back, she was trying to rewrite history, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I didn't comment. I didn't argue. I did something better. I sent a message to one person, Ethan, and all it said was, "You might want to check Jasmine's Facebook post." She's making it sound like you never existed. I knew exactly how he would react, and just like that, Jasmine's little story fell apart. Within an hour, the comments started shifting. Ethan had commented, "LMAO. You forgot to mention the part where you were in love with my dad's son. I guess that doesn't fit your little victim story, huh?" That was all it took. The responses changed, people started asking questions. Wait, what is he talking about? Who was she in love with? Is this true? And just like that, Jasmine's lies collapsed. She deleted the post within minutes, but the damage was done. Her reputation? Gone. Her excuses? Exposed. Her manipulation? Useless. And me? I had won. Without saying a single word, Jasmine and Ethan thought they could escape the fallout, but now, they were turning on each other, and soon, they were about to lose everything. Jasmine and Ethan thought they could lie their way out of this. They thought they could twist the story, turn people against me, and come out looking like the victims. But when Ethan exposed the truth, their whole plan fell apart. And now? They weren't just dealing with me, they were dealing with each other. After Ethan's comment, Jasmine tried to do damage control. She messaged me again, "Jasmine, Oscar, please, don't let Ethan ruin everything. He's just being immature. You and I can still talk." I ignored it, but then, Ethan messaged me too. "Ethan, you happy now? She's losing her mind." I smirked. They were finally turning on each other. People started talking, mutual friends, neighbors, even some of her family members. They all wanted to know the same thing. Did Jasmine really sleep with Ethan? She tried to deny it, tried to act like it was a rumor, but Ethan, he didn't hold back. That I got a call from a friend who had run into Ethan at a bar. "Dude," he said, "your son is out here trashing Jasmine. He's telling people she's crazy, obsessed, and ruined his life." I couldn't believe it. Ethan, the same kid who betrayed me, was now acting like the victim, like Jasmine had forced him into it, like he hadn't gone along with it willingly. But Jasmine, she wasn't taking the blame alone. She showed up at my house. I opened the door and saw her standing there, makeup streaked from crying, eyes wild. "Oscar," she whispered. "Can we talk?" I stepped back. "Why would I ever want to talk to you?" She let out a shaky breath. "Because you were right. He used me." I stared at her. She was pathetic. "You ruined your life for a thrill," I said. "And now you want sympathy?" She grabbed my arm. "Oscar, please." I was stupid. I thought Ethan cared about me, but he's telling people I'm a joke. He won't even answer my calls. I yanked my arm away. "You deserve each other," I said coldly. "Now get off my porch." She broke down, but I didn't care because I was finally free. Jasmine and Ethan thought they could destroy me. Instead, they destroyed themselves, and soon, they were about to hit rock bottom. Jasmine and Ethan were falling apart. She had lost everything: her home, her reputation, even the guy she risked it all for. And Ethan, he had burned every bridge. The two of them thought they were unstoppable. Thought they could sneak around behind my back and walk away without consequences. But now, the world was watching them crumble. One night, I got a call from a friend who still kept tabs on Ethan. "Dude," he said, "your son is a mess." I didn't say anything. Just let him talk. Apparently, Ethan had been bragging about what happened at first. He treated it like some twisted achievement, telling people he had stolen his dad's wife. Until he realized no one respected him for it. His friends stopped hanging out with him. His mother, my ex-wife, wanted nothing to do with him. No one in the family would even return his calls. The people he thought would cheer him on were disgusted. And Jasmine, she wasn't there to comfort him, because she had her own problems. It didn't take long before the truth spread. Our old social circles, neighbors, even her own family, they all knew. Jasmine wasn't just a cheater, she had slept with her own stepson. And in a world where people love scandals, hers was the kind that no one let her forget. She lost friends. People whispered when she walked into a room. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who destroyed her marriage for a kid. And when she tried dating again, men found out about her past and dropped her immediately, because who wants to be with a woman who had an affair with her husband's son? she had no one left, and just when I thought it couldn't get worse for her, she showed up at my door again. That I opened the door and saw her standing there. Her hair was messy, her face hollow, her eyes desperate. "Oscar," she said, voice shaking. That I crossed my arms. "What do you want, Jasmine?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I have nowhere to go." I stared at her. The woman who had betrayed me in the worst way possible was now standing in front of me, begging for mercy. That I almost laughed. "You should have thought about that," I said, "before you destroyed everything." She took a shaky breath. "I made a mistake." I tilted my head. "Which one? Lying? Cheating? Sleeping with my son? Or thinking you could get away with it?" Her lips trembled. "Oscar, please. Just let me come inside." I smiled. "No." Then, I shut the door in her face. For the last time, Jasmine and Ethan thought they could do whatever they wanted. Now, they had nothing, and me, I was about to start a new chapter without them. Jasmine and Ethan were nothing to me now. Their lies, their betrayal, their pathetic attempts to manipulate me, all of it was over. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up with anger in my chest. That I woke up with peace. Because I wasn't just moving on, that I was leaving them behind for good, cutting them off completely. I changed my number, blocked them on every platform, and made sure they had no way of reaching me. Focusing on myself, I started hitting the gym again, getting back into old hobbies, and making plans that had nothing to do with them. Repairing relationships, I reconnected with family and friends I had ignored because of Jasmine. Real people who actually cared about me. And you know what? It felt good, because for the first time in a long time, my life was about me, not Jasmine, not Ethan, just me. But of course, he wasn't done. That a few weeks later, I got an email from Ethan. At first, I didn't even want to open it, but curiosity got the best of me. "Dad, I know I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just want to explain. It wasn't about you. It was never about hurting you. Jasmine manipulated me. She made me think she loved me, and I was too stupid to see it for what it was. Now she's gone, and I have nothing. No friends, no family, no respect. I don't know how to fix this. I just want my dad back." I stared at the screen. For a moment, a small part of me wanted to respond that he was still my son, but then, I remembered that he hadn't cared when I was the one hurting, that he hadn't thought about me when he was sneaking around with my wife, and now that he was the one suffering, now, he wanted to fix things. I closed the email and I never responded. That night, I stood on my balcony, looking out at the city. For months, I had been waiting for this feeling, the moment where I could finally say, "I'm free," and now, that moment had finally come. That I didn't care what happened to Jasmine, that I didn't care what happened to Ethan. They were both just a bad memory, and me, I was finally stepping into a future that had nothing to do with them. That I thought my story was over, but soon, something was going to happen that I never expected, something that would change everything. That I thought I was done with them. Jasmine was out of my life. Ethan had lost everything. That I had moved on, built a new routine, and finally felt free. But just when I thought this chapter was completely closed, a new twist changed everything. That it was late one evening when my phone rang, unknown number. That I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Hello?" A deep sigh. Then a familiar voice. That my ex-wife. Ethan's mother. "Hey, Oscar," she said, her voice tense. "We need to talk about Ethan." My jaw tightened. "I don't think there's anything left to say." She hesitated. "I know what he did to you. And trust me, I'm not calling to defend him. But, he's in trouble." I said nothing. She continued. "He's been spiraling. Drinking too much. Losing jobs. Getting into fights. And now? He's in jail." I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay unmoved. Jail, so, this was how far he had fallen. "Drunk driving," my ex-wife explained. "He crashed into a parked car. No one was hurt, but, the cops found him passed out at the wheel." I ran a hand over my face. Ethan had always been reckless, but now, he was completely lost. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Because he called me from the station, she said. And you know who he asked for? I didn't answer. You? She whispered. That I stood there, staring at the floor, heart pounding. For months, I had told myself I was done with him, that he wasn't my son anymore, but now, he was calling for me, not Jasmine, not his so-called friends. Me, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't know what to do. Ethan made his choices, but now, I had to make mine. Do I walk away forever? Or do I give him one last chance? I stood in my living room, phone still in my hand, mind racing. Ethan was in jail. He had hit rock bottom, and now, he wanted me, not Jasmine. Not his mother. Me, and the worst part, I had no idea how to feel about it. I didn't decide right away. I spent the night thinking, remembering everything he did, the betrayal, the lies, the way he had no remorse when I confronted him, but I also remembered something else, the little boy I raised, the son I had once been so proud of, and that's when I knew that I had to see him. One last time. When I arrived at the station, the officer led me to a holding area, and there he was, Ethan, but this wasn't the cocky, smug kid I had kicked out of my house. He looked broken, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking, like he had finally realized just how badly he had screwed up. I sat down across from him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, his voice cracked. Dad, I didn't know who else to call, he said, voice hoarse. No one else picked up. I leaned back in my chair. That's what happens when you burn every bridge. He nodded, rubbing his face. I know. Silence. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, I messed up, Dad. I let out a slow breath. You didn't just mess up, Ethan, I said. You destroyed everything. His eyes glistened. I know. And I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. I thought I could do whatever I wanted and that you'd always be there. I clenched my jaw. You thought wrong. Ethan took a deep breath. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't want to be this person anymore. I don't know how to fix it. For the first time, I saw it, real regret, not the kind of fake apologies he had given before. This was different, and for the first time, I wondered, was it too late for him? Ethan was at his lowest, but did he deserve another chance? I had a choice to make, walk away forever, or help him try to put his life back together. I sat there, staring at Ethan, the son I had raised, the same son who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. Now, he looked like a broken man, not the cocky, arrogant kid who thought he could get away with anything, not the reckless son who didn't care who he hurt, just a lost boy, sitting in a holding cell, realizing he had destroyed everything. And the truth, I didn't know if I still cared. You don't want to be this person anymore? I asked, my voice even. Ethan nodded, his hands shaking. I don't. I narrowed my eyes. And what exactly do you expect me to do about that? He swallowed hard. I don't know, he admitted. I don't have anyone else. I thought I could do everything on my own, but, he exhaled shakily. I was wrong. I didn't speak. I just let his words sit there, because I wasn't sure if this was real. Or just another way for him to escape responsibility. You ruined my life, Ethan. He flinched. I know. You slept with my wife, and you stood in front of me like you didn't even care. His face twisted in shame. I did care. I don't know, I thought I was proving something. I clenched my fists. Proving what? That you could betray the one person who always had your back. Silence. Then, softly, I thought you never saw me as a man. I frowned. What? I spent my whole life trying to get your approval, he said, his voice cracking. And when she gave me attention, it felt like, I don't know, like I finally had power. Like I was finally on your level. I stared at him, my anger mixing with something else, something I didn't want to feel, sadness, not for me, for him, because for the first time, I realized he had never been competing with me. He had been desperately trying to be me. I leaned forward, looking him dead in the eyes. You want to fix your life? Ethan nodded quickly. Then you start from nothing, I said. And you do it alone. He blinked. What do you mean? I sat back. I'm not bailing you out. I'm not handing you a way out of this mess. You're going to sit here, face what you did, and deal with the consequences like a man. His face paled. You're not going to help me, he asked, his voice small that I shook my head. I just did. Then, I stood up and walked away. Ethan thought I would save him, but this was the only way he would ever learn, because I wasn't just letting go of my anger, that I was letting go of him for good. Walking out of that police station, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, relief, not because Ethan was in jail, not because he had finally realized he had destroyed everything, but because for the first time, his problems weren't mine anymore. That I had spent months letting his betrayal eat me alive, but now, I was done. Ethan thought I would save him, that I would be like every other time in his life, bailing him out, fixing his mistakes, giving him another chance, but this time, I let him sit in the mess he made. No more fatherly advice. No more second chances. No more me. And as I drove home, a realization hit me that I had been so focused on the betrayal, on what Jasmine and Ethan had done, that I never stopped to ask myself, what do I want next, because for the first time in years, had no one holding me back. That night, I sat on my balcony, looking out at the city. No regrets. No anger, just peace. Jasmine gone, Ethan gone. My past no longer my problem. That I wasn't just moving on. That I was becoming someone new, and whoever that man was going to be, he had nothing to do with them. That I had finally let go of Jasmine and Ethan, but what was I going to do with this new life? Because for the first time in a long time, the future was mine. For so long, my life had been defined by betrayal. Jasmine's lies. Ethan's selfishness, the humiliation, the anger, the pain. But now, that part of my life was over, and the best part, I didn't even care anymore. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter. No more checking my phone, wondering if Ethan had tried reaching out. No more thinking about Jasmine, wondering where she had ended up. No more looking at the past and wishing things had been different, because now, for the first time in years, I was focused on me. I started taking better care of myself. I planned trips I had always put off. I reconnected with old friends, real people who actually cared about me, and every day, the past became less important, until eventually it didn't matter at all. Jasmine had thought she could cheat and get away with it. Ethan had thought he could take what was mine and walk away untouched. But now, they had nothing, and me, I had everything, because I had something neither of them would ever have again, peace. Self-respect, freedom, and no matter where they ended up, had already won. They say the best revenge isn't getting even. It's moving on so completely that they become irrelevant, and now, that's exactly where I was. Jasmine, Ethan, everything they did, none of it mattered anymore. One afternoon, I was grabbing coffee when I saw a familiar face. Jasmine. She was sitting alone at a corner table, stirring her drink absent-mindedly. She looked different, not in a way that made me miss her. In a way that made me realize just how far she had fallen. Her hair wasn't done, her clothes were simple, not the expensive brands she used to flaunt, and her eyes, they didn't hold the cocky confidence they once did. They held regret. And when she saw me, she looked away first, not me. For the first time, she was the one who couldn't face reality. I didn't go over to her table. I didn't say anything. I just grabbed my coffee, walked past her, and left, because the truth was she wasn't part of my story anymore, and that was the real closure. I had wasted so much time waiting for Jasmine and Ethan to regret what they did, but now I realized I didn't need their regret. I didn't need to see them suffer. I didn't need an apology, because the real victory was the fact that I was finally free, and my future, it was all mine. The true ending